The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that seemed to shake the very foundation of the station. Ambassador Velthor of the Draxian Empire floated into the center of the circular amphitheater, his 6 arms spreading wide as holographic displays materialized around him. The assembled representatives from across the galaxy fell silent, their various forms of communication ceasing as they sensed the gravity of what was about to be announced. Velthar's 3 mouths spoke in unison, the translation devices converting his words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. Esteemed council members, I bring news that will shake the foundations of our civilized galaxy. The Mordock swarm has broken through the outer rim defenses. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Ithic representatives chimed in harmonious tones of distress, their translucent bodies flickering between blue and deep purple. The energy-based luminos began pulsing rapidly, their photonic forms casting dancing shadows on the walls. Even the massive Titan-class Corvic beings so large they required special viewing platforms shifted uncomfortably in their restraints. Kepler 438's system fell first, Velthar continued. $3 billion Zentarians consumed in less than 48 hours. The Mordock stripped the planets bare, leaving nothing but dead rock floating in space. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then came Proxima Centauri, but the aquatic collective's underwater cities provided no protection. The Mortac adapted, created amphibious variants within hours of contact. The holographic displays showed the aftermath barren worlds where once thriving civilizations had existed. Space debris that had once been mighty cities now drifted aimlessly through the void. The images were too terrible to process, yet impossible to ignore. The third system was Wolf 359. Velthar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The Mechanical Synthesis Alliance thought their robotic nature would protect them. They were wrong. The Mordock didn't just consume their organic components, they assimilated their technology, their knowledge, their very essence. The swarm grows stronger with each victory. Elder Zixandra of the Ithic Council rose from her crystal throne, her voice ringing like wind chimes in a storm. How many ships do we face? What are their capabilities? Conservative estimates suggest 12,000 primary vessels. With support craft numbering in the hundreds of thousands, Velthar replied. But these numbers mean nothing. The Mordock don't fight like us. They don't have individual ships. They are the ships. Each vessel is a living organism, capable of self-repair, adaptation, and reproduction. They learn from every encounter, evolve with every battle. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives began shouting in their native languages, translation devices struggling to keep up with the cacophony of fear and desperation. Some species had already begun calculating retreat routes to the farthest corners of the galaxy, while others demanded immediate military action. High Counselor Raxel of the Luminos Collective projected his thoughts directly into the minds of those present. We must respond immediately. Deploy the Quantum Destruction Fleet. Activate the Dimensional Shields. Rally every available warship from every member species. And who, Velthor asked pointedly, will lead this glorious charge against certain death? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Ithic, with their advanced crystalline weaponry that could shatter moons, remained silent. The Luminos, capable of manipulating pure energy and bending light itself, dimmed noticeably. The Corvic, whose massive battle stations could level entire solar systems, made no move to volunteer their forces. Minutes passed in uncomfortable silence. Each species looked to the others, hoping someone else would step forward, would volunteer. Their people for what everyone knew would be a suicide mission. The Mordock had never been defeated. It had never even been slowed down. They were the galaxy's ultimate predator, and every civilization knew it. In the far corner of the chamber, the section reserved for the newest and least influential members, Junior Ambassador Park Hyan-woo of the Terran Federation slowly rose to his feet. The human was small compared to most of the other representatives. His simple blue uniform looking almost primitive next to the advanced technologies and natural magnificence of the elder races. The Terran Federation volunteers, he said simply. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in what could only be described as laughter. The Ithic chimed in amused harmonies. The Luminos pulsed with colors that indicated mirth. The Korvik's massive forms shook with what passed for chuckling. Among their kind, the humans. Belthor Essex's eyes focused on Park, a mixture of disbelief and amusement crossing his reptilian features. You've been part of this council for barely 18 months. Your species has just learned to travel between stars, fight with kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. The Mordocks have consumed civilizations that were building starships when your ancestors were still living in caves. Park remained standing, his expression calm despite the mockery surrounding him. We're still here, aren't we? It has to count for something. Your largest warship, interrupted Elder Zixandra, couldn't even scratch the hull of a Mordock scout vessel. Your primitive fusion reactors produce less energy than a Lumino's child at play. What exactly do you propose to do against a force that has conquered half the galaxy? We'll figure something out, Park replied with a slight smile. Humans are good at that. The laughter grew louder. Even some of the more diplomatic species couldn't hide their amusement at the humans' audacity. Here was a species that had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, offering to face an enemy that had brought ancient star empires to their knees. Belthar raised one of his 6 arms, calling for order. Oh, very well, if the humans wish to throw their lives away in a futile gesture, who are we to stop them? Perhaps their sacrifice will buy us time to prepare proper defenses.
Ow.
The vote was unanimous. Every species in the chamber supported humanity's deployment against the Mordock swarm, not because they believed in human capabilities, but because they saw it as the perfect opportunity to demonstrate just how insignificant Earth's contribution to galactic affairs truly was. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Park remained in his seat, staring at the holographic displays that still showed the devastation left by the Mordock. His aide, a nervous young woman named Lieutenant Kim So-young, approached hesitantly. Sir, what exactly is our plan? Shh, she whispered. Park stood and straightened his uniform. Right now, we're going to send a message to Admiral Kim Do-hyun and tell him to prepare the 7th Fleet for the fight of their lives. Halfway across the galaxy, Admiral Kim Do-hyun sat in his command chair aboard the battleship Indomitable, reviewing the latest intelligence reports from the Outer Rim. The grizzled veteran had fought in the Martian Rebellion, the Outer Colony Wars, and the asteroid mining conflicts. He'd seen desperate situations before, but this felt different. This felt final. The communication came through on the priority channel marked with the highest security clearance. Kim read the deployment orders twice, then leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Around him, the bridge crew continued their duties, unaware that they had just been assigned to what everyone in the galaxy considered a suicide mission. Sir, his executive officer, Commander Lee Soo-jin, noticed his expression. New orders. Kim opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Good people, all of them. Veterans who had followed him through hell and back, young officers eager to prove themselves, engineers who could work miracles with spare parts and determination. They deserved to know what they were getting into. Prep the fleet for immediate departure, he said quietly. We're going to show the galaxy what humans are really made of. As the Indomitable's engines began to power up, Kim stared out at the stars and wondered if humanity was about to write its final chapter in the history of the galaxy. But something deep in his gut, a feeling that had kept him alive through countless battles, told him that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was about to learn something new about the species from a small blue planet on the edge of nowhere. The swirling vortex of hyperspace collapsed around the human fleet as they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Altair system. Admiral Kim Do-haeon gripped the armrest of his command chair as the massive viewscreen flickered to life, revealing a scene that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The Altair system was dying. What had once been a thriving star system home to the peaceful Altarian civilization was now a feeding ground for the Mortok swarm. Thousands upon thousands of biomechanical ships moved in perfect synchronization around the fourth planet, their dark hulls pulsing with an organic rhythm that made them look more like living creatures than spacecraft. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park Min-jun from the sensor station. "Sir, I'm reading over 15,000 Mortok vessels. They're draining the planet." Kim studied the tactical display with the cold calculation of a veteran commander. The Mortok ships formed intricate patterns around Altair 4, massive tentacle-like structures extending from their holes to the planet's surface. Energy readings showed they were literally sucking the life force from the world below, converting organic matter into fuel for their endless expansion. "Status report," Kim ordered, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "Seventh Fleet is holding position at the edge of the system," reported Commander Lee Soo-jin from the fighter bay. "All squadrons are ready for launch. Engineering reports all ships are at full combat readiness." Kim nodded, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. What you're seeing down there is exactly what happened to 3 other star systems. Billions of innocent lives consumed by these creatures. Today we draw the line. Today we show them that humanity doesn't back down from a fight." He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. These men and women had followed him through impossible odds before, but nothing like this. The Mortok fight with perfect coordination. They move as one mind, one purpose. But that's also their weakness. They can't adapt to chaos, to the unexpected. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's controlled chaos. Commander Lee's voice crackled through the comm system from the fighter bay. "Admiral Fighter Squadrons report ready for launch. We've studied every piece of intelligence on Mortok tactics. They rely on overwhelming numbers and perfect synchronization. Time to show them what happens when you fight pilots who learn to fly by racing through asteroid fields for fun." "Launch all fighters," Kim ordered. "Operation Thunderstrike is a go." The belly of the Indomitable opened like a metal flower, disgorging squadron after squadron of human fighters. These weren't the sleek, elegant craft preferred by other galactic civilizations. Human fighters were built for war, angular, aggressive, bristling with weapons and armor. Each pilot was a descendant of a species that had survived by outthinking. Predators, by adapting. By never giving up, Captain Choi Min-ho commanded the destroyer group that had been positioned near the system's asteroid belt. His ships were invisible to the Mortok sensors, hidden among the tumbling rocks and metallic debris. "Destroyer Group Alpha, this is Choi. Remember, we hit hard and fast, then disappear. Make every shot count." The first wave of human fighters screamed toward the Mortok formation at impossible speeds. The alien swarm responded exactly as expected, moving with perfect coordination to intercept the incoming threat. Thousands of Mortok vessels shifted position, their biomechanical hulls rippling as they prepared to overwhelm the human forces. With sheer numbers, then everything went wrong for the Mortok. The human fighters didn't engage in the traditional formation combat the aliens expected. Instead, they scattered like leaves in a hurricane, each pilot following their own chaotic flight path. Some dove toward the planet's surface, others climbed high above the orbital plane, and still others seemed to fly in completely random directions. Are they doing? The question rippled through the Mortok hive mind in their own alien language. Their perfect coordination became a liability. As they struggled to track dozens of individual targets all acting independently, Commander Lee's voice came through the comm with barely contained excitement. "Tiger Squadron, break left and engage the formation near the second moon. Dragon Squadron, dive low and hit their flank. Remember, no patterns, No predictability. Keep them guessing. The human fighters struck like a swarm of angry hornets. Kinetic weapons, dismissed by the galaxy as primitive, proved devastatingly effective against the Mordok's organic hulls. The aliens had evolved to handle energy weapons and exotic matter disruptors, but simple depleted uranium rounds traveling at relativistic speeds punched through their defenses like paper dot in the asteroid field. Captain Choi watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction. Now, he whispered into his cum, all destroyers fire at will. The human destroyers emerged from the asteroid field like predators from the shadows. Their railguns spoke in tongues of fire and metal, sending tungsten penetrators streaking. Across space, at a significant fraction of light speed, the Mordok formation, focused on the chaotic fighter attack, had no time to react to this new threat. Explosions blossomed throughout the alien fleet as the human weapons found their marks. The Mordok ships, designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, had no defense against solid projectiles that simply punched through their hulls and exploded inside their vital systems. Sir Lieutenant Park reported from his sensor station. The Mordok are trying to reorganize. They're attempting to form a defensive sphere around the planet. Kim smiled grimly. They're still thinking like a hive mind. Commander Lee, initiate Phase 2. The second wave of human fighters appeared from an unexpected direction. They had used the planet's gravity well to slingshot around behind the Mordok formation. This time, they carried special payloads, fusion torpedoes, that had been modified with human ingenuity to be completely unpredictable in their flight paths. The torpedoes corkscrewed through space, their courses changing randomly as they approached their targets. The Mordok point defense systems, designed to track and destroy incoming missiles, couldn't calculate intercept courses for weapons that didn't follow logical trajectories. But the real surprise came when the human capital ships finally engaged. The battleship Indomitable and her sister ships didn't try to match the Mordok's advanced technology. Instead, they relied on something the aliens had never encountered: human stubbornness. All ships, ramming speed, Kim ordered. Target the largest Mordok vessels. Make them think we're going to ram them. The human battleships charged directly at the Mordok formation, their hulls glowing with the heat of their overcharged engines. The alien ships, programmed to preserve the hive mind above all else, moved to avoid the seemingly suicidal attack. At the last moment, the human ships veered away, their massive railguns firing at point-blank range into the now exposed Mordok vessels. The aliens' perfect coordination worked against them once again, as their evasive maneuvers had put them in exactly the wrong position to defend against the human attack. For the first time in their species' history, the Mordok began to feel something they had never experienced before: fear. These humans fought without logic, without pattern, without the careful calculations that governed civilized warfare. They were chaos incarnate, and chaos was the one thing the hive mind couldn't process. Admiral Commander Lee's voice crackled. Through the Mordok vessels are beginning to withdraw from the planet. They're actually retreating. Kim watched the tactical display in amazement as the alien fleet began to pull back from Altair 4. The Mordok ships moved with none of their usual coordination, instead fleeing in apparent panic toward the edge of the system. Sir Lieutenant, Park called out, I'm receiving a transmission from the Mordok fleet. It's a warning signal. They're broadcasting to all Mordok forces in the sector, warning them about the Chaos Warriors who fight without reason or pattern. As the last of the Mordok vessels disappeared into hyperspace, Kim stood and looked out at the liberated planet. Below, the Altarian civilization was saved. But more importantly, humanity had just announced to the galaxy that there was a new power to be reckoned with. All ships prepare for orbital insertion, Kim ordered. We have a planet to help rebuild. The human fleet moved toward Altera 4, their mission far from over. They had won the battle, but the real work was just beginning. As rescue ships prepared to launch relief operations, Kim couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had expected humanity to fail spectacularly. Instead, they had just witnessed the birth of something unprecedented, a species that could win wars not through superior technology, but through the sheer unpredictability of the human spirit. The quantum communication networks throughout the galaxy buzzed with activity as news of humanity's impossible victory spread from system to system. In the crystalline spires of the Ithic homeworld, elder councils gathered in emergency session, their harmonic voices creating discordant notes of confusion and disbelief. The energy beings of the Luminous Collective pulsed with colors that had no names, struggling to process what they had witnessed. On the Draxian capital ship, Eternal Glory, Ambassador Velthor stared at the tactical recordings for the 100th time. His 6 eyes tracked the chaotic movements of human fighters as they tore through Mordock formations with seemingly random attack patterns. "This is impossible," he muttered in his native tongue. "No species fights like this. No civilization survives." By embracing chaos? But what happened next would shake the foundations of galactic politics even more than the battle itself. Dr. Han Juan stepped off the transport shuttle onto the scarred surface of Altair 4, medical team following close behind. The planet bore the terrible wounds of Mordock feeding. Vast sections of cities had been drained of all organic matter, leaving behind skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving world. The air itself seemed thinner, as if the planet was struggling to breathe. "Set up the field hospitals in the central plaza," she ordered her team, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had coordinated disaster relief on a dozen worlds. "Engineering cores, I want water purification systems online within the hour. We've got millions of survivors who need immediate medical attention." The Altarians who emerged from their underground shelters were unlike anything in human experience. Tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight, they moved with the fluid motions of natural-born artists. Their large, expressive eyes held a depth of intelligence that spoke of centuries spent in contemplation and creativity. These were not warriors. They were poets, philosophers, and dreamers who had never known the brutality of war. Elder HFY, the surviving leader of the Altarian Council, approached Dr. Han with hesitant steps. His people had heard the stories of human barbarism from other galactic species. Tales of a violent race that settled disputes with primitive weapons and crude tactics. Yet here was this human female, organizing relief efforts with an efficiency that would have impressed the most advanced civilizations. "Dr. Han," he said in accented but clear human standard, We do not understand. Your people have just fought a terrible battle. Should you not be claiming our world as spoils of war? This is the way of the galaxy." Han looked up from the medical scanner she was calibrating, her expression genuinely puzzled. "Spoils of war? Elder HFY, we didn't come here to conquer anyone. We came here to help. Your people are hurt. Your world is damaged. That's what matters now." The elderly Altarian's eyes widened with something approaching wonder. "But your Admiral Kim, he could claim rights of conquest. Your species could demand tribute, establish military bases, exploit our resources. This is what powerful species do." "Not us," Han replied simply, returning to her work. "We fight when we have to, but we're not here to build an empire. We're here to help you rebuild your home." Word of humanity's actions spread even faster than news of their military victory. The galactic communication networks carried recordings of human medical teams working alongside Altarian survivors, of human engineers repairing power grids and water systems, of human soldiers helping to clear debris from schools and hospitals. Instead of looting them, Captain Yoon Jae-soon received the first distress call while his patrol ship Guardian was conducting routine security sweeps near the Vega system. The transmission came from a mining colony on the edge of civilized space, their voices tight with panic as they reported incoming raider ships. Captain, his communications officer, reported, "It's the Scarlet Claw pirate clan. They've been hitting mining operations throughout this sector for the past 5 years. Colony reports 12 raider vessels inbound." Yoon studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a veteran patrol commander. The Scarlet Claw had a reputation for brutality that extended across multiple star systems. They specialized in attacking defenseless civilian targets, taking what they wanted and leaving destruction in their wake. "Set course for the mining colony," he ordered. "Maximum burn." The Guardian was not an impressive warship by Galactic standards, a mid-sized patrol vessel with moderate firepower and decent speed. It was designed for policing duties rather than major fleet actions. But as the human ship dropped out of hyperspace near the besieged mining colony, something unexpected happened. The Scarlet Claw raiders, already in the process of surrounding the helpless miners, suddenly broke off their attack and fled into hyperspace without firing a single shot. The colony's defenders watched in amazement as the feared pirates simply vanished, leaving only the solitary human patrol ship behind. "Colony Control, this is Captain Yoon of the Terran Patrol Vessel Guardian. Please report your status." The voice that responded was filled with disbelief. "Captain Yoon, this is Colony Administrator Krellinax. The raiders... They just left. You don't understand. They outnumbered you 12-1. Yoon smiled grimly. "Word travels fast in this galaxy, Administrator. I think they've heard about what happened at Altair." Similar incidents began occurring throughout the sector. The mere arrival of human ships was enough to send pirates, slavers, and raiders fleeing without a fight. The psychological impact was unprecedented. A single species had managed to shift the balance of power not through threats or displays of force, but through the simple demonstration that they would fight when necessary and help when possible. On the bridge of the raider ship Blood's Edge, Captain Vexstar studied the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The Mordock swarm had been the galaxy's ultimate nightmare, an unstoppable force that had consumed entire civilizations. Yet these humans had not only defeated them, but had done so using tactics that defied all military logic. "Captain," his first officer reported, "we're receiving multiple warnings from raider clans throughout the sector. The humans are establishing patrol routes. They're not demanding tribute or territory, they're just... protecting everyone." Vexter's forearms drummed nervously on his command chair. "This changes everything. For centuries we've operated in the spaces between the great powers, hitting targets that were too weak to defend themselves and too insignificant for the major species to protect. But these humans are actually protecting the weak." The transformation rippled outward, from system to system. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to pirate activity suddenly became viable again. Civilian transports began reporting human patrol ships escorting them through dangerous sectors, asking for nothing in return except the knowledge that innocent lives were being protected. On the research station Deep Thought, Dr. Quinara of the Zentarian Science Collective compiled data that would reshape galactic sociology. The statistics were undeniable. Crime rates in human-patrolled sectors had dropped by over 80%. Piracy had virtually disappeared. Even territorial disputes between minor species were being resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. "The humans have introduced a new variable into galactic politics," she reported to the Zentarian Council. "They possess the capability for devastating warfare, but they choose to use that power only in defense of others. This creates a psychological deterrent that extends far beyond their actual military presence." The implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, species had achieved strategic dominance not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple promise that they would protect those who could not protect themselves. Back on Altera 4, Dr. Han stood in the rebuilt Central Plaza, watching as Altarian children played alongside human engineers who were teaching them about water purification systems. The planet was healing, its people beginning to hope again. But more importantly, the galaxy itself was changing. Elder Zephi approached her with a datapad containing the latest reports from across the sector. Dr. Han, you should see this. COT communication networks are reporting similar activities throughout human-patrolled space. Your people are not just helping us, you're helping everyone. Han smiled as she watched a group of Altarian artists working with human architects to design a memorial for those lost to the Mortok attack. Elder Zephi, there's something you need to understand about humans. We're not the galaxy's conquerors. We're not even trying to be its rulers. We're just trying to be its guardians. The old Altarian's eyes filled with something that might have been tears. In all my centuries, I've never seen such a thing. A species that fights not for gain, but for the simple principle that the strong should protect the weak. As the twin suns of Altair set behind the rebuilt city skyline, Han reflected on how quickly everything had changed. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as an ignored newcomer, dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. In just a few short months, they had become something unprecedented, a species that commanded respect not through fear, but through the simple demonstration that some things were worth fighting for. The galaxy was learning that humans were different. They didn't conquer, they protected. They didn't demand tribute, they offered aid. And in doing so, they had achieved something that no empire in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had made the galaxy a safer place for everyone. War room aboard the orbital command station Harmony buzzed with activity as holographic displays showed conflict zones across 4 different galactic quadrants. 8 months had passed since the liberation of Altair, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. What the elder races had mockingly called humanity's lucky break had become something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how galactic politics operated. Lieutenant Colonel Kang Taimin stood before the massive tactical display, his experienced eyes tracking the movement of human peacekeeping forces across known space. Red markers indicated active conflicts, blue showed human deployments, and yet green represented recently pacified zones. The pattern was unmistakable. Wherever humans went, peace followed. Status report, he requested from his aide, Captain Nambora. Sir, we've got simultaneous deployments across 23 different systems. The Kepler 186 situation is stabilizing under Major Song's command. The Proxima Centauri dispute has been resolved. Both species have agreed to joint mining operations. And the Vega Sector pirates have completely abandoned their operations after the Guardian incident. Kong nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. What about the elder races? How are they responding to our ... success? Captain Nam activated another display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. That's the interesting part, sir. The Ithic Council has requested copies of all human military doctrine manuals. The Luminos Collective is studying our historical records, apparently. They're fascinated by something they call controlled chaos theory. Even the Draxians are quietly reassessing their territorial expansion plans. On the surface of Kepler 186, Major Song Hygiene crouched behind a makeshift barrier as energy blasts scorched the air above her head. The Kepler system had been a battleground for over a century, with the crystalline Keplari and the metallic mechanoids fighting an endless war over mining rights to the system's abundant rare metals. Major, her communications officer, called out, both sides are requesting immediate military support. The Keplari want us to help them push the mechanoids back to the outer planets. The mechanoids want us to help them secure the inner mining stations. Song shook her head as she studied the tactical situation. The two species had been locked in this conflict for so long that they had forgotten what they were originally fighting about. Generations of warriors had been born and died. In trenches that hadn't moved more than a few kilometers in decades? Negative on both requests, she replied. We're not here to help either side win. We're here to help both sides stop losing. She activated her suit's external speakers and broadcast on all frequencies. This is a major song of the Terran peacekeeping forces. All combatants will cease fire immediately and report to designated neutral zones for negotiation. Any continued hostilities will be met with decisive action. The response was immediate and predictable. Both sides opened fire on her position, apparently believing that eliminating the human commander would solve their problems. Song sighed and activated her tactical display. All units, commence Operation Peaceful Intervention. Remember, we're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to make it impossible for them to hurt each other. The human response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of choosing sides or overwhelming both armies with superior firepower, the Peacekeepers implemented what they called controlled battlefield management.
Oh.
Non-lethal sonic weapons disabled combatants without permanent harm. Electromagnetic pulse devices shut down weapon systems, but left life support intact. Force fields separated opposing forces while leaving escape routes open. Within hours, century-old battlefield fell silent for the first time in living memory. Confused Kepleri and mechanoid soldiers found themselves in comfortable detention. Facilities, receiving medical attention and hot meals while their weapons were safely stored away. Now, Song announced to the assembled commanders from both species, "Let's talk about what you're actually fighting for." The negotiation that followed would become a model for human peacekeeping operations across the galaxy. Instead of imposing a peace treaty, the humans facilitated a process where both species could express their actual needs and concerns. The Kepleri needed the rare metals for their reproductive cycles. Their silicon-based biology required specific minerals to create offspring. The mechanoids needed the same materials to maintain their cybernetic components and repair their aging infrastructure. "So you're both fighting over the same resources," Song observed, "but you're using them for completely different purposes. Has anyone ever considered that you might be able to help each other?" The breakthrough came when human engineers demonstrated that Kepleri biological processes could actually purify the rare metals that the mechanoids needed. While mechanoid technology could extract materials from previously unusable or that the Kepleri had been ignoring, within months, former enemies were working together on joint mining operations that produced more resources than either species had ever obtained through warfare. Back on the command station, Lieutenant Colonel Kong reviewed reports from similar operations across the galaxy. The pattern was consistent. Humans didn't just end conflicts, they transformed them into opportunities for cooperation. "Sir," Captain Nam interrupted his thoughts. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting a formal presentation on what they're calling the Terran Shield phenomenon." Kong smiled grimly. 8 months ago they were laughing at us. Now they want to know how we're doing what we're doing. The truth was more complex than most galactic civilizations could understand. Humanity's success wasn't based on superior technology or overwhelming force. It was based on something that other species had largely forgotten: the ability to see conflict as a problem to be solved rather than a competition to be won. Dr. Li Yunhee, the fleet's chief xenopsychologist, had been studying the phenomenon from a different angle. Her research station aboard the Harmony was filled with cultural analysis data from dozens of species, all trying to understand why human peacekeeping methods were so effective. The key, she explained to a gathering of officers, is that most galactic species have evolved beyond the need for individual initiative. The Ithic think as a collective. The Luminos exist as pure energy and make decisions through consensus. The mechanoids follow programmed protocols, but humans... We're still individuals who can think independently while working together. This individual initiative, combined with humanity's history of surviving through cooperation rather than domination, created a unique approach to conflict resolution. Where other species saw winners and losers, humans saw potential partners. Where others saw irreconcilable differences, humans saw opportunities for mutual benefit. The psychological impact rippled through the galaxy in ways that no one had anticipated. The Scarlet Claw pirate clan, which had terrorized shipping lanes for decades, formally disbanded and applied for civilian mining licenses. The Void Stalkers, a nomadic species that had survived by raiding isolated colonies, established their first permanent settlements and began trading with their former victims. Most remarkably, species that had been locked in territorial disputes. 4 centuries began resolving their conflicts through negotiation. The mere possibility that humans might intervene was enough to encourage diplomatic solutions. No one wanted to be on the receiving end of humanity's peaceful intervention protocols. Commander Park Seung-ho, analyzing the strategic implications from his intelligence post, compiled a report that would reshape galactic political theory. "We've achieved something unprecedented," he wrote. "We've created a system where peace is more profitable than war, where cooperation is more effective than conquest, and where the threat of intervention is more powerful than the promise of victory." The elder races, who had dismissed humanity as primitive warmongers, were now studying human history with the intensity of religious scholars examining sacred texts. They were particularly fascinated by humanity's ability to emerge from devastating conflicts with improved methods for preventing future wars. The Ithic Council sent a delegation to Earth, specifically to study the human concept of learning from mistakes. The Luminos Collective requested detailed analysis of human decision-making processes under stress. Even the isolated Titan-class Korvac broke their centuries-long silence to ask about human methods of conflict resolution. What they discovered challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. Humans had survived not by becoming the strongest or the smartest, but by becoming the most adaptable. They had learned to turn enemies into allies, to find opportunity in crisis, to create stability through strength rather than fear. As reports continued to stream in from across the galaxy, Lieutenant Colonel Kang realized that humanity had accidentally stumbled onto something profound. They hadn't just become the galaxy's peacekeepers, they had become its teachers, showing ancient civilizations new ways to think about conflict, cooperation, and the future of galactic society. The Terran Shield wasn't just a military phenomenon, it was a cultural revolution that was transforming the galaxy one system at a time. And it was only the beginning. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a thunderous rumble that echoed through the vast amphitheater. For the first time in over 3,000 years, every seat in the ancient assembly hall was occupied. Representatives from over 500 species had gathered for what historians would later call the most significant political event in galactic history. Ambassador Park Hynwoo stood at the entrance, adjusting the ceremonial sash that marked his new position as Supreme Peacekeeper. 2 years ago, he had been a junior diplomat representing a species that most of the galaxy considered barely worthy of membership. Today, he was about to address the largest gathering of galactic leaders in recorded history. The chamber itself was a marvel of ancient engineering, its crystalline walls capable of translating. It's not just words but emotions and intentions across hundreds of different forms of communication. As Park walked down the central aisle, the ambient hum of the translation matrix grew louder, processing the thoughts and reactions of beings whose ancestors had been building starships. When humans were still discovering fire, General Lim Sang-ho waited at the ceremonial podium, the ancient sword of galactic peacekeeping resting on a platform beside him. The weapon was more symbolic than functional, a relic from the early days of the Council when disputes were settled through ritual, combat rather than diplomacy. No one had expected it to be awarded again, certainly not to a species that had been members for less than 2 standard years. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Park began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. 2 years ago, I stood in this same chamber and offered humanity service to the galaxy. Many of you laughed. Some of you were openly dismissive. All of you expected us to fail. A ripple of what might have been embarrassment passed through the assembled delegates. The crystalline Ithic chimed in harmonics that conveyed sheepish acknowledgement. The energy-based luminos dimmed their radiance in what was their equivalent of looking away in shame. You weren't wrong to doubt us, Park continued. By any reasonable measure, humanity should have been completely outmatched. Our technology was primitive, our numbers were small, and our experience with galactic politics was virtually non-existent. But you missed something important about my species. He paused, letting his words sink in as he looked around the chamber. Humans don't fight to win. We fight to protect. We don't seek conquest. We seek peace. And we've learned something over our long and bloody history. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be very, very good at war. The chamber fell, silent as massive holographic displays activated throughout the amphitheater. The images showed the transformation of the galaxy over the past 2 years. Star systems that had been battlegrounds for centuries, now hosting joint trade stations. Former pirate strongholds converted into refugee centers, and species that had been mortal enemies for millennia, working together on cooperative projects. Ambassador Svelthor of the Draxian Empire rose from his seat, his 6 arms spread in a gesture of formal recognition. Supreme Peacekeeper Park, the Draxian Empire formally acknowledges the effectiveness of human peacekeeping operations. In 2 years, you have accomplished what we could not achieve in 2 millennia. Similar acknowledgments came from around the chamber. The Titan-class Corvic, so massive that they required special platforms to participate in council sessions, rumbled their approval in subsonic frequencies that made the entire station vibrate. The gaseous nebula collective swirled in patterns that conveyed profound respect. But the most shocking moment came when the chamber's main entrance opened to admit a delegation that no one had expected to see. The Mordock representatives glided into the chamber, their biomechanical forms moving with an eerie grace that still sent shivers through many of the assembled delegates. The Hive Speaker, a creature that seemed to be part machine and part living organism, approached the central podium. Its voice, when it spoke, carried harmonics that the translation matrix struggled to process. For 10,000 years, the Mordock have known only hunger, the Hive Speaker intoned. We consumed worlds, devoured civilizations, and knew no purpose beyond the endless feeding. But the humans, ... they showed us something we had forgotten. They showed us that strength can serve life instead of consuming it. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and alien exclamations. The Mordock, the galaxy's most feared predators, were voluntarily surrendering to human authority. We offer our biotechnology to the Terran Protection Accords, the Hive Speaker continued. Our ships will serve as mobile hospitals instead of weapons of destruction. Our knowledge of biological systems will help heal worlds instead of consuming them. We choose to become gardeners instead of devourers. General Lim stood and lifted the ceremonial sword, its ancient metal catching the light from the chamber's crystalline walls. I accept this responsibility on behalf of humanity and all species who choose peace over conquest. Let this blade remind us that we draw it not to conquer, but to protect. The signing ceremony that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood side by side as they formally agreed to the Terran Protection Accords. The documents established humanity as the galaxy's primary peacekeeping force. But more importantly, they created a new framework for galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than competition. Dr. Han Juwan. Dr. Han Juwan, now Director of Galactic Humanitarian Operations, watched from the observation deck as former enemies embraced and began discussing joint projects. The Altarians, whose world had been the first to be liberated by human forces, were already planning cultural exchange programs with species from across the galaxy. It's remarkable, she said to her aide, Commander Kim Soyoung, 2 years ago. Most of these species wouldn't even communicate with each other. Now they're planning joint colonies and shared research projects. The transformation wasn't just political, it was psychological. The galaxy had spent millennia operating under the assumption that conflict was inevitable, that different species could never truly coexist. Humanity had shattered that assumption, not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple demonstration that protection was more powerful than conquest. Captain Yoon Jae-sung, Galactic Patrol Fleet, reviewed the latest statistics from his flagship. Piracy had decreased by 97%. Territorial disputes had virtually disappeared. Trade between species had increased by over 400%. The galaxy was experiencing the most comprehensive peace in its recorded history. Sir, his communications officer reported. We're receiving requests for patrol assignments from over 200 different systems. They're not asking for protection from specific threats. They're asking for our presence to help maintain the peace. As the formal ceremonies concluded and representatives began to file out of the chamber, Ambassador Park remained at the podium, looking out at the emptying seats. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. Humanity had been given the chance to shape the future of galactic civilization, and they were determined not to waste it. The Terran Protection Accords were more than just a treaty, they were a promise. A promise that the strong would protect the weak. that conflict would be resolved through negotiation rather than warfare, and that the galaxy's future would be built on cooperation rather than conquest. Elder HFY of the Altarians approached the podium as the last delegates departed. Supreme Peacekeeper Park. My people have a saying, the greatest warriors are those who win without fighting. Your species has proven the truth of these words. Park smiled and shook the elderly Altarian's hand. Elders HFY, we've learned something important about war and peace. The best way to win a fight is to make sure it never starts. But if it does start, you'd better be ready to finish it quickly, and then help everyone rebuild. As the lights in the great chamber began to dim, Park took one last look around the historic amphitheater. 2 years ago, humanity had been dismissed as primitive warmongers. Today, they were the architects of the most comprehensive peace the galaxy had ever known. The age of human peacekeeping had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. From the outer rim to the galactic core, species that had known only conflict for millennia were learning to work together. Protected by the knowledge that somewhere among the stars, human guardians stood ready to defend the peace they had all helped to create. The transformation was complete, but the work was just beginning. Humanity settled into its role as the galaxy's protectors. They carried with them the hard-won wisdom that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. And they were determined to ensure that justice would prevail among the stars for generations to come. The end.